Hey Pathfinders, welcome to week 10. Well, that was 3, so I guess just 1, 2. There, week 10. Can you believe it? 10 weeks we have been meeting like this? It's a pretty amazing thought. I can't believe it myself. I am glad you're with us again this week. This week I want to do things a little bit differently, and I want to talk about your favorite subject, school. Yeah, I thought you'd want to talk about that. Or maybe I should say education would be a better way of saying it. I want to talk about education. What is education? Well, I was thinking about it, and I was thinking in really simple terms. Education is asking and finding answers to questions. And as you learn answers to some questions, you discover that there are more questions, right? You know, you start with the first question and then you answer that, and then that leads you to more. So here's an example. When you're little, you learn that if you have one item and then you get another item, the question of how many items do you have has an answer of 2 items, right? You have 2. And if you talk to a really little kid and you ask them, how old is your grandma? The answer is the largest number that they can think of. She's 10. Or she's 100, because 100 is the answer to what's the biggest number you know of, and grandma's got to be that old, right? And then they learn that there's this number, is there a bigger number than 100? And eventually it gets to, there's this number called infinity, and they don't know what it means, but it's the biggest number. And so they answer to what's the biggest number is infinity. And so when you say, how old is your grandma? They say infinity. And then your grandma says, no, I'm not that old, you know. And then they'll get into an argument with maybe an older brother or sister about something silly like, who's taking the trash out, right? Who's taking the trash out more? And little brother says, I've taken it out hundreds of times. And the older one says, well, I've taken it out thousands of times. And then, well, I've taken it out millions of times. And then the one of them says, well, I've taken it out infinity times. And then the little one, he learns from the older brother and sister, is there a number bigger than infinity? Yeah, it's infinity plus 1. I've taken it out infinity plus 1, so it's your turn to take out the trash. You know, I get it. And that's an education, really, because that little kid has learned how to answer more and more questions. The first question was, what's 1 plus 1? It's 2. And can you have more than 2? Yeah, you can. Well, how many can you have? Well, you can have 10. Oh, no, you can have 100. Oh, no, you can have 1,000. Oh, a bill. Oh, infinity. Oh, infinity plus 1. That must be the biggest. Questions and answers. If you have, and then you learn that if you have 10 and then give me 3 M&Ms, you have 10 M&Ms and you give me 3, how many are you going to have left? Well, that's a new question. And you got to learn how to navigate questions and answers. So education is getting answers and then asking more questions. And we're going to stick with this for a little while. And then you get answers and you ask more questions, and the more answers you're able to give, the more questions get asked. It's true in math, right? In math, the math that you have in school builds. If you're in 7th grade and you're able to answer 1st grade math questions, that's easy. Easy peasy, right? But college math for a 7th grader, well, that's hard. But if you stay in math, right? One day college math would be easy because you went into grad school and you got some hoity-toity degree in math. Well, then college math would be easy. Algebra, geometry, trigonometry, all of that stuff. Calculus, piece of cake. That's if you've done it a lot and you keep building. You keep learning to ask new questions and how to find the answers. That's true not only in math, but it's true in history, right? What questions does history ask? History asks questions like, well, what happened? Well, when did it happen? Why did it happen? Who did it? When did Europeans sail across the ocean? The answer, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So you learned the answer to the question. And then there's more questions. Well, what did Columbus do when he got there? And did he really think he had made it to India? No, you know, we got that whole story. It's true in other subjects too. It's true even in PE, right? What kind of questions happen in PE? Here's a question that happens in PE. You're sliding into home plate. The umpire is there, and the ball gets thrown to the catcher, and the catcher tags you. And what's the question? Yeah, the question is, did you beat the tag, right? Or did the catcher get you out? Or how about the question, how many push-ups can you do? And how do you get to the place where you can do more push-ups? If you want to increase the number of push-ups, what do you got to do? PE asks those kinds of questions. Questions and answers. It's called an education. It's true in spelling, right? Your teacher calls out a word and you have to write it down. What's the question? The question is, how do you spell anti-disestablishmentarianism, right? And you say, I think you spell anti-disestablishmentarianism 7-2-TYGKRBZPWQT. I think there's more letters. There must be an A in there somewhere, and a K and an L. Yeah. And did you get it right? Well, at some point, you're going to learn how to spell, and you'll figure out how to spell anti-disestablishmentarianism. You'll learn harder and harder words because somebody keeps asking harder and harder questions. It's true in reading, it's true in science, it's true in music, it's true in social studies, geography, art, biology, auto shop, wood shop. Everything grows by asking new questions after you've answered the old questions. The more I think about it, I think life is about questions and answers. I've worked a lot of jobs before I became a pastor. And I learned that the better informed I was about my job, the better questions I could ask my customers so that I could answer the questions that they came to me asking. Does that make sense? I'll say it again and then I'm going to give you an illustration. I learned that the better informed I was about my job, the better questions I could ask my customers so that I could answer the questions that they came to me asking. And so here's your example. When I was a locksmith, a man came into our lock shop and he said he needed a lock for his door. Pretty simple request. I need a lock for my door. Now, if I didn't know much about locks, I would walk over behind the counter and I would just grab the first lock I saw and I would say, here, that'll be 20 bucks, right? There you go. But the more I was educated about locks, the more I learned what questions I needed to ask people. What kind of lock are you looking for? What kind of door will it go on? Is it a wood door, a metal door, a glass door? Is it a door on a business or a house? Or is it a mailbox? What kind of door is it? How long do you want this lock to last? What color of lock do you want? Is it a knob? Is it a deadbolt? Is it a padlock? Do you want a key that matches the keys you've already got, or do you want an all-new key? Do you want some kind of a digital lock where you push buttons and it opens, or do you want it to be electric, or do you want it to be mechanical? Those are questions you need to ask. How many times a day is this lock going to be locked and unlocked? Is this door on a bank? Is this a thick door or a thin door? What size of lock are you looking for? By asking all of those questions and a whole lot more, I was able to give the person the answers that I needed. You know, they would give me answers and I would ask more questions and they would give me answers. And by the end of our conversation of questions and answers, I would be able to give them the lock that they needed. I would be able to help them in the best way possible. Or here's another way of looking at it. Imagine that you got sick, right? And you had to go to the emergency room. Or maybe you got hurt. Sick or hurt, doesn't matter. And the doctor comes into the room in the emergency room and never asks you one question, never even looks at you. Do you think they're going to be able to figure out what's wrong with you? No. What makes a good doctor is their ability to take the things that they have learned over time and then turn around and ask good questions. And once they have some questions answered, right? They come in and they, does that hurt? Does that hurt? Does that hurt? Well, why do you feel sick right there? And are you throwing up? Are you running a fever? What's your blood pressure? All of those kinds of questions. Then you have this conversation with the doctor, and what do they want to do next? They want to run more tests, right? So that they can learn more answers to what's wrong with you, or at least try to figure out what's wrong with you so that they can help you get fixed. That's their goal. Yeah. You know, these last few months, I've heard a lot of questions. So have you. How about this one? How much longer are we going to be dealing with this coronavirus thing? Have you heard anybody ask that question? Maybe it was you. Why do we all have to wear masks? Why aren't they wearing masks? Did you wash your hands? Right? When will school be back? Will it be back to normal next year? When can I see my friends? When will you get your job back? Well, what's the answer to those questions? My guess is if you're asking those questions, I think you're smart enough to find the answers to them. Sometimes answering questions is hard because you just don't know the answer. And we can be embarrassed to admit that we don't know the answer. But if we're going to learn, if we're going to be educated, we have to admit to somebody that we don't know the answer. And then listen so that they'll teach us. How about questions like this? Why are the people marching? Why are the people so angry? Why are they rioting and looting and burning buildings? What is it to be like in a minority in this country? What is it like to be black? I watched a short YouTube video this week that helped me answer some of those questions. You can watch it too. You can go to YouTube and search for the video. The title is this: Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. It's a good video. It educated me. It answered some of my questions. And once you've learned to answer those questions, I dare you to ask the next question, and that is, what can I do, or what should I do? This week for our staff worship at the conference office, Pastor Les had heard a talk on that topic, and he shared with us at the office what he learned. Just in a nutshell, there were 3 things that were recommended, and I'm going to share them with you. Number 1, make sure you have over-representation. Or if that's not possible, then really listen to the representation that you do have. Maybe that's, what is he talking about? So let me give you an example. Since I've started, let's pretend that I'm not talking to you on video, but you're all gathered around me. Let's say there's 50 of you, right? And you've been wondering, why does Pastor Randy have 2 pairs of glasses on his head? And you turn to the person sitting next to you, because we're not social distancing in my imagination. Hey, what's with Pastor Randy and the 2 pairs of glasses? That seems kind of weird. Sunglasses? He's standing in the middle of the woods. There's no sun. Why is he wearing sunglasses? And you have all these questions about how dumb Pastor Randy looks. And you're all beginning to talk. 50 of you all asking questions. Why Pastor Randy? Boy, he looks like an idiot. What's wrong with Pastor Randy? Why would anybody do that? 2 pairs of sunglasses? Nobody wears 2 pairs of sunglasses. I mean, I guess you could try and put it over top, but it doesn't really work. But I guess Pastor Randy, maybe that, I don't know. Why is he doing that? Somebody ought to ask Pastor Randy. And so somebody finally asks me, Pastor Randy, why are you wearing 2 pairs of sunglasses? And I begin to answer the question. But so many people are asking the question about Pastor Randy. Why? And you're turning to each other and asking this question that you never hear my answer. Now, how many people would it take? Let's say there was 50 of you. How many people would it take until everybody heard the answer? If there's just me and you don't hear me answer, if there was 2 people that were wearing 2 pairs of sunglasses, would you hear the answer then? What if it was 3? What if it was 4? I'll bet you if there was 50 people just like me wearing 2 pairs of sunglasses, the 50 people who are asking the question would probably hear the answer. So the first point they're saying of what can I do is let's make sure that the voices that are being taught, that are talking, are being listened to enough that that volume matches the volume of people listening. Second thing, what can you do? Well, you should study on the topic. You should read what's being written about the subject. That's a smart thing to do. Read books. There's lots of them out on this subject. And number 3, put yourself in situations that aren't necessarily comfortable to learn how they feel. The way we say it in church circles is we should walk in their shoes as much as possible. Pastor Carl, who was in Rwanda, his whole ministry is about teaching people to walk in someone else's shoes, to stop long enough to go, wow, they behave this way. I wonder why. I'm going to go and I'm going to enter into their world and I'm going to try to understand as much as possible. That's a start. That's just a start to understand what's happening in the world around us. Now I want to tell you a secret. I think that in life you're never going to get to the point where there are no more questions. There's always more to learn. And we expect our teachers to have all the answers, but I have learned that teachers have questions and their teachers have questions. The more you learn, the more questions you have. That's one of the neat things about being a human being, is we're continuing to learn. But it's also one of the frustrating things, because we really want somebody to have all the answers, right? I used to be surprised by the disciples Philip and Thomas, right? Because at the end of Jesus' life here on earth, you know, they had walked with Jesus and lived with him. They had been with him 24/7 for 3 years, right? For 3 years, and he's at the end of his time with them, and he's getting ready to leave them, and he's talking to them, and he's saying things that they just have questions. And they're like, well, wait a minute. And they still had questions. And so Jesus says to his disciples in John chapter 14, you know the Father. And they were like, wait, no, we don't. And Jesus' response to them is, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And what he's saying is, if you want to know God, do you really want to get to know God? Then you need to look at Jesus, because he's God. That's what he's saying in John chapter 14. You want to get to know God better? You want to know what God is like? Then look at Jesus. Just change the question a little bit. What is Jesus like? Well, we get the opportunity to read about him. And then we get the opportunity to do the things that he said and he stood for. And when we stand up for the things that Jesus stood up for, it's going to be uncomfortable, because it's not something we naturally want to do. But if there's somebody who's oppressed and we stand for them, that's something Jesus would have done. If we care about the people who are hurting, the downtrodden folks, people who maybe aren't as cool as you are, and you befriend them, that's what being like Jesus is. And you get to know Jesus by doing the things that Jesus did. So that's my encouragement for you this week. Our whole meeting today is purely this. Don't be afraid of questions. Don't be afraid of hunting for answers. And when it comes to being like God, we have the opportunity to be that on earth. We get to be his hands and feet. We say it that way. We get to do the things that Jesus would do. And in doing them, we learn more about him, about the emotions that he feels, the way he cares about people. Those are all things that are important to God. So that's my encouragement for you. Let's bow our heads together. Father in heaven, I thank you for the opportunity for us to meet again this week. I pray that you would be with each Pathfinder as we seek ways to do just that, to be your hands and feet in the world around us. I pray that you would be with those who are expressing themselves, that our society would wake up and listen. And Lord, I pray that those that are feeling ill from the coronavirus, that your healing hand would be upon them. We look forward to the day when we can see each other again, and we look even more forward to the day when we can be with you. I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.